And just Zoom getting ready to record. And so the way that this is going to work tonight is Mr. Creedon, Michael Creedon, will be on for 30 minutes. Myself and my co-host, Jacqueline Salver, that you all know, will be fading out. You will be able to listen to his platform and anything that he wants to share on tonight. He has a full 30 minutes to do so. He will cue us when he's ready for us to come back in to continue the dialogue from which he started. We want to thank you once again, Electric James Inspirational Talk, for tuning in and listening to us and being excited about this election that's coming up on November the 8th, midterms. Mark your calendars. So without further ado, we're going to get ready, myself and my co-host, we're going to fade out. And Mr. Creedon, you're going to take the show, okay?
All right.
All right. Just a minute.
All right, Mr. Creedon, it's for you.
Outstanding. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to be able to talk to your listener community this afternoon about an incredibly important midterm election that we have coming up in just early voting is 3 weeks away, and the election day is 5 weeks away. My name is Michael Creedon. I'm the candidate, the Democratic candidate for House District 24 of the Texas House of Representatives. Texas House District 24 encompasses Friendswood, League City, Kemah, Clear Lake Shores, Dickinson, Hitchcock, Santa Fe, a small piece of Lamarck, and a small piece of Texas City, and then goes down to Tiki Island and stops short of the Causeway and stops short of Galveston Island proper. So that is what the district is. There's about 200,000 people within the district. Roughly 130,000 of them are able to vote in this midterm election. My opponent is the incumbent who's been in office for quite some time, I believe 11 years. His name is Dr. Greg Bonin. He's the Republican, and he's also the chairman of the House Appropriations Committee. So that are your two candidates. There is a third, it's a libertarian. I must admit, I don't know much about him, but there is a third candidate that you will see on the ballot. I wanted to address this evening, because I normally don't get a full 30 minutes. I'm pretty excited about that. I'm going to talk a little bit about my background, and then I have about 15 issues that I'm going to try to dive a little deeper into and give you some thoughts and perspective and my views on those. And I promise that I will cover what are considered to be the three major themes for this election, which is immigration and border security, women's reproductive rights, and inflation relief. Those seem to be the three major issues that have a lot of people talking, but that's not to say the other 12 or 13 that I'm going to chat about are any less or any more important. But I'm not going to go in particular order. So if you're wanting to cue in on any of those three issues, stay with me, and I will certainly address those, hopefully to your satisfaction. I've been in Texas for a little over 22 years now. My second time in Texas. My first time I was here for a couple of years. And so that puts me roughly as a 23-year resident, 22 of them in League City, Texas, and 2 or 3 of them up in Seabrook. Married, I've been married for 30 years to my high school sweetheart. We dated quite a bit even before then. I have 3 fantastic sons, one of which attends UTSA, and 2 of which are high school age in Clear Creek High School. Passionate about Galveston County, passionate about the Houston area, and really do love the state that is my second home for so many years. As a working professional, I've done 2 careers simultaneously. I would like to say I've done both of them fairly well. The first career was my primary career for 30 years, was as an Exxon Mobil employee. I started off as an engineer with Exxon up at the Baytown refinery, and then retired last year as an executive over the mechanical organization, also at the Baytown refinery. But in between, I spent a fair amount of time throughout Texas and even overseas a couple years in Thailand. So I've got a wide corporate experience with Exxon, leadership, management, budgets, planning, people, human resources, engineering, project management, maintenance, operations, technical, a large gamut, both in the upstream and the downstream and the midstream. So I understand business. I excelled at business, and I did very well for myself and my family. But more importantly, I took care of the people that were under my charge for those years, ending with a position that had the responsibility of 550 employees, 2,000 to 3,000 contractors, and over $500 million in budget. So I am qualified to be a state legislator and deal with the types of budgets that they have to endure, and certainly am more than qualified on the leadership side. Second career I did simultaneously was in the military as a reserve officer and when called upon active duty. I served 28 years in the United States Army. I'm still serving in the United States Army. I have one more year to go before I will retire as a colonel, and I'll retire next year with 29 years of service. I started off in tanks, armor, and then transitioned into civil affairs. I commanded at the company level. I commanded at the battalion level. I've also served 2 deployments, 2 tours in Afghanistan, one as a team chief in 2007 and 2008, in a very kinetic, violent area of the country at that time. And then my second tour as a company commander in 2011 and 2012 up in the northern part of the country, which wasn't as violent, but had its own set of unique challenges. So I understand borders from that. I understand warfare. I understand combat. I understand stress. I think those are all skills and experiences that will serve me well when elected on November 8th to the Texas House. So that's a few minutes about me. I hope you can gather from that I am not a career politician. In fact, this is only my second election. The first one I attempted was as a Clear Creek Independent School District trustee in 2021 for the at-large position. I was not successful. And then a few months later, I filed to run for this particular position, House District 24. And I've been on the campaign trail since December of last year. Let's transition into some issues now, and I'll give you a few thoughts. I'm going to start off with what is classically not a Democratic issue to stump on, which is inflation relief. However, I wish more Democrats would stump on that, because Democrats have some pretty creative solutions that we should be applying to the House and to Austin and to the Senate and to the state, which I probably don't need to tell you is being held by a bit more of the far right Republican world these days, to give us some relief. Look, inflation's real. Democrats didn't create inflation. Republicans didn't create inflation. It was created by a global chain, logistics chain that was put under tremendous stress from COVID and other factors, including the Ukraine conflict, that has created runaway inflation, which is 7, 8, 9% for the middle class and those that make less than that, who lack discretionary income to begin with. This is brutal. This is brutal. When gasoline was $4 a gallon, when milk has skyrocketed, when the typical goods that you buy from your grocery stores and Walmarts are now 10, 15, 20% higher than they used to be, and your paycheck isn't, that's a real problem. And yet I see nobody, zero, in Austin attempting to provide relief for this. Funny, it's not funny, that's my sarcasm coming out. There's 32 states that have actually rolled out some form of inflation relief to their constituents. And we have not in Texas, and I think that's a shame. I think it's doubly a shame when you consider that we're going to be in a revenue surplus this year. Let me just pick on one tax that happens out there, the oil and gas severance tax. So when oil and gas are pulled up from the ground in Texas, they're taxed, and they're taxed at a small percentage, and that goes to the state budget, goes as state revenue. Well, oil, 2 years ago was in the $40, $50 range. Oil recently has been as high as over 100. So you can imagine that just from that tax alone, we're going to have twice the revenue because the price of oil doubled and the tax is off of that new revenue. That's an additional $3, $4, $5 billion that is coming to the state, in which is kind of our money. And why isn't that coming back to us is a question that I have as a legislator or a future legislator, and I look forward to doing something about. Well, Mike, where could that relief come from? Well, the motor gasoline tax could be reduced. That would be a simple one. Or you could reduce the sales tax. You could reduce the sales tax by 1/4 or 0.5%, allow us some break in what are some outrageous prices, and have more buying power, or at least try to get back to the buying power that we used to have 2 years. And yet it's definitely silence and cricket out of Austin on this issue, with one exception. I can assure you that my good friends on the Republican Party will be screaming about inflation and how the Democrats are doing nothing to control it. Well, that might work at the federal level, but kind of doesn't work at the Texas House level and state level when it's run by the Republican Party right now. So I don't see them giving us anything back, and I don't understand why. Now, maybe you say, don't give it back for tax relief, put it towards some other programs. That may not be a bad idea too. I don't see anyone talking about that either. But let's talk about some of those other programs where funding could go to. How about education? I stand for high quality public education, the type of education that will enable and allow all of our children to be citizens of our community that we can rely on. Public schools are the backbone of a democracy. They absolutely are. I have seen places in the world where public education is not a priority or is no priority, and they have significant problems. For example, the 2 years I spent in Afghanistan, 50% of the population basically had no access to public education. They had no access to any education. If you were a woman in Afghanistan, by the time you hit about 8, you were gone. You were in the house, you were doing your duties to run the family, and you were pretty much not seen or heard again in society. It's a tragedy. It's a tragedy to see so many lives not enriched and not being able to get to their full potential. And it explains on so many levels why Afghanistan is a dysfunctional country. And I can pick on a lot of other countries that have the same view as well. If you're able to subjugate 50% of your population by keeping them from being educated, yeah, you're gonna have an interesting worldview that your country will have. And unfortunately, we get to see a lot of that as havens for anti-democracy as well as terrorism. So Is our public education system currently funded to the extent it should be? Of course it's not. It absolutely is not. It's being squeezed by Austin with caps on what the local districts are able to raise through their tax rates and their inability to hold on to that money to provide for quality teachers at a solid compensation, including a full range of medical benefits and cost of living adjustments for their retirement. And none of that happens in Texas school systems, which is a shame. I'm not originally from Texas, as I shared with you. I'm actually from the Northeast, New Jersey, and their school systems are a priority because they make their teachers a priority, including selection, retention, and compensation. And Austin is not doing enough in any of those areas, but instead is spending a tremendous amount of time in reducing the funding that goes to our public school system, while at the same time, for reasons that escape me, claiming that vouchers and charter schools and private school systems are a better way to go. I can tell you, I fundamentally disagree with that. I don't have a problem if you wish to send your kid to a private school, but I don't think you should be paid for it. I don't think you should get a voucher for it. I think our public school systems, the bedrock of our society, is where our focus needs to be. You may say, well, Mike, I don't have kids in school, so why should I care? Well, they're the ones that are going to create the next generation of welders that are going to build the clean energy grid. They're going to create the next generation of nurses and EMTs that are going to take care of us. The next generation of firemen and firewomen who are going to hopefully keep us safe at night in case we have a tragedy at the house. They're going to keep they're going to create the next generation of public workers that keep our roads going. The next generation of technology workers, businessmen, accountants, cosmetics, designers, artists. I can go on and on and on. Those are the people that are going to enrich our lives every single day, whether you have children or not. It's essential that our school systems create those souls that are going to be great citizens who understand our history, understand civics, and understand how precious democracy really is. So that's where we could move some of that excess revenue. Let me talk about a couple issues that are a little closer to House District 24. One of them is flood control. I don't know about you, but I sometimes wonder in large rainstorms about whether I'm going to make it down to some of these streets around here, a la Harvey, where we had 40 some odd inches on the ground. And I didn't make it down some of those streets. And I'm sure most of you all know exactly what I'm talking about. There is no excuse for Galveston County not to have flood control methods and means by which we can be safe when Mother Nature whips up a storm on us. Now, look, I understand that the coastal spine is a $50 billion project 30 years from now that's got everyone's attention. That is not what I'm talking about for flood control and flood relief. What I'm talking about for flood control and flood relief are the simple things: retention pond maintenance, de-snagging the runoff ditches, making sure our sewers and systems are open and clear. And the people that do that hard work are our cities and our communities and our flood districts. They don't need billions. They need hundreds of thousands, but they don't need billions to do their work. Additional funding needs to go to this critical nuts and bolts, daily blocking and tackling that our towns have to do to make sure we stay safe for flood control. Let's talk about the grid. You know, Texas, if it was on its own, would rank in the top 5 in terms of oil producing nations in the world. And yet the lights go out during the winter freeze. The lights went out in Texas. Unacceptable. I don't want to hear any more about the blame game that it was windmills or solar or this or that. What it was, unfortunately, was a system that had no chance of surviving. Look, ERCOT runs the power distribution and the power generation part of it. They're relatively transparent. They got hammered in this storm because their power generators went down. Why did their power generators go down? Well, in some cases, their power generators went down because they couldn't get natural gas. Why couldn't they get natural gas? No one can answer that. No one can answer that because we don't have a railroad commission who actually controls in any meaningful way the natural gas grid like ERCOT runs the power generation grid. So natural gas was, well, I don't know, it went somewhere. Some of it got exported, some of it went into caverns, some of it got locked in, but there was no method or means by which to move gas around the state to the places that needed it, a la the power generating facilities, so that we could keep the grid up and running. And that's an Austin issue. That is my firm belief. If Austin is not going to control the natural gas grid, I can assure you industry will take advantage of that and come up with their own rules that will maximize their profitability. And I might speak from some of that from experience. So that is how they behave. That's the free market. We can be mad at the industry over that, but that is the rules by which they're playing. And the only way those rules change is for Austin to change them. Yeah, I'm going to change them if I get elected, because the current group of people has no interest in that. And that's a shame. Jobs. There is no reason why Galveston County cannot be a leader in technology and manufacturing and academia and healthcare. They just lack the coordinated vision to create the conditions by which companies and academia want to come to Galveston County and set up shop. We have the natural resources. We have the infrastructure. We have the human talent. We have the land. We have reasonably great weather, except for the hurricanes, but we are in a perfect area to dominate in the area of jobs creation, and yet we don't. And Austin has a role in that. If Austin's going to be too busy playing national politics and not taking care of District 24 by creating the conditions, whether that's tax incentives or anything to try to drive industry and business to want to be in Galveston County, then the jobs will not come. The cities are doing their very best with the resources that they have, but Austin's got a role in this. And you know what? My opponent, being head of the Appropriations Committee, probably could do a lot more for the district that he represents than he has been. Speaking of an area that he excels in is healthcare, because he is a doctor. What about the Medicaid expansion? Why have we not been able to do that? We have 1 million people in the state that are falling through the cracks. The federal government is willing to pay 90, 91, 92% of that gap to get these people the health care that they deserve. And yet, for political reasons, Texas will not accept that. And don't tell me there's not money. I'm going to go back to my oil and gas severance tax example to say we got more than enough money to help pay for that 6 or 7 or 8% and put those people on the rolls. Look, when people aren't on healthcare rolls or on insurance, we're going to pay for it. Taxpayers pay for it eventually through what, the hospitals, when they can't handle those costs, those get passed along to us. It's a lot better to do it proactively than reactively. I'd like to spend a minute and talk about common sense gun violence reduction measures. I'm a combat vet. I support the Second Amendment. I own weapons. I am not advocating for people to take weapons away. However, I am advocating fiercely advocating for universal background checks and red flag laws and consequences for homeowners who do not lock up their weapons. And then there is a tragedy that happens because they were negligent in securing what should be a tool that's used either for a job, as in hunting, or for sportsmanship, as in target practice. There is no reason why we can't put through Austin gun violence reduction measures, and I will be a tireless advocate for those. I have been on the wrong end of a gun too many times to remember, and I have been on the trigger side of a gun, and I understand exactly what it can do, and there is no reason for it to be used in the manners that they're being used today to create harm to lives, in particular veterans who use that as their primary methods for suicide, and right now young people where gun violence has overtaken car accidents as the #1 cause of death. Infrastructure development and investment. Grand Parkway is coming. If you don't know what the Grand Parkway is, think of the third loop of Houston. That's going to be what the Grand Parkway is. And it's going to split League City and Dickinson about where 646 is. It's going to be a 4-lane toll road. What will the Grand Parkway do for Galveston County and House District 24? It's going to change us. It will change us. If you look at what the Loop did and the Beltway did, it changed all those communities. Are we out in front of it? Is it going to be more warehouses? Is it going to be more housing? Is it going to be an academic area? Is it going to be healthcare? Who's going to be vying to be near that outer loop? It's a once in a generational opportunity. And I don't think Austin's taking it very seriously. And if they don't, well, then developers will, and they will let us know what it is we're going to get when that 4-lane road gets open. Is it going to be a noise of traffic whirling by us, going to other places, or will we be part of it and shape our own destiny? I would like to be part of that. Border security. Look, the border is not healthy. It has not been healthy for quite some time. We haven't had immigration reform since 1982 when Reagan was president. And yes, I was alive during that. I don't remember when that reform was done, but I think it's long overdue, 40 years, that we should look at that again. I like what candidate Beto is trying to do with guest visas and worker visas and trying to streamline the process. I do not like having the National Guard stationed on the border. I don't think that's a good use of our military. They're not really effective except for taking pictures and being able to tip off the Border Patrol people about what's going on. It's not a great way to spend our military, and I think it's actually demoralizing them. What I do think we should do, though, is I am convinced we need to come up with a group of Republicans and Democratic legislators who get with the Republican and Democratic congressmen of Texas and go to DC and say, Washington, President Biden, Senate, House, we are Texas. We want to work with you to solve the problem. The feds have the national elements of power, economic, informational, diplomatic, military, that can actually influence the Central American and South American countries to stem the tide of immigrants in their own country, as opposed to trying to figure out what to do with them once they get to the border. We are not going to shame Washington into doing something, and yet they hold all the cards. We need to work with them, and yet that doesn't play well on Fox News, I guess. We need to work with them. If we work with them, I bet they would loosen up some of those elements of power and create some really interesting solutions to help stem the immigration tide that is happening at our border. Veterans, look, as a veteran, I'm passionate about veterans. I also know that veterans are not all in good places. There's a significant amount of mental health issues within our veterans community. There isn't enough housing. There isn't enough help. And they are more apt to be homeless than many other sectors of our population. It's a shame that, our veterans defend the basic rights for me, even right here, to speak my mind and to hopefully represent you. That was off the backs of veterans going in faraway lands, defending democracy from other people trying to take it away from us. And yet, when their time is up, they unfortunately more frequently than they should end up in places that they should not be, because government services are not there to help them turn into to be better. Women's reproductive rights. I support and want a women's choice, period. I was happy. This is Mike speaking. I was happy with Roe v. Wade as it was. I thought it balanced all of the competing views on how to deal with abortion and women's reproductive rights, where the women had the primary choice up until the part where the baby was viable outside the body, and then the state had a role. To overturn that, I thought was wrong. It's a tragedy. It's an insult to women. Women's choice is the only choice. It's not my choice what my wife does with her body. I will give her my thoughts, her choice. Firmly believe that, and I will fight for that to the bitter end. I think the trigger law is a tragedy, with no exceptions for rape and no exceptions for incest. And now, even when the mother's body is in jeopardy, they have to fight through the court system and convince doctors that they really are that bad off before they will get the care that they so desperately need. I am pro-choice, period. Voting rights. I don't understand this. We live in a democracy and everyone should vote. I get that our elections need to be secure. I don't have a problem with some fundamental security so we don't have false voting. But whether I vote at 3 a.m. or 2 p.m, who cares? I earned the right to vote, and I should be able to vote. And for the election laws to have been changed, they were, and we know why. It was to isolate a whole segment of the population from having access to the polls, is absolute nonsense. Redistricting is nonsense. There is tremendous confusion in House District 24 in Lamarck and in Texas City. The 3 precincts that were moved from House District 23 into my district, they were part of Keith Henry's commission, whereas he's a commissioner of Texas City, that's his area. He's running as a candidate for House District 23. His mother lives in one of those precincts. When I go block walking there, they go, "Why are you running against Keith Henry?" And I am not running against Keith Henry. Keith Henry is running in 23. I'm running in 24. Like, well, we're in Keith Henry's district. We want to vote for him. You can't. You got ripped away and you got moved over. I am sorry about that, but that's what some political parties will do to absolutely ensure that they get the numbers they need to win an election. They have moved communities out of what they consider to be a vulnerable House district into what they consider to be a safe House district, and they didn't ask anybody whether they wanted to move. Well, folks, in those precincts, I want to be your representative, and I am not running against Keith Henry. I'm on your side. Folks, I've used up all my 30 minutes. I wasn't sure I was able to do it, but apparently I was able to do it. The topics that I wasn't able to get to that I believe in are living wages. Absolutely believe that if you go to work, you should make a wage that allows you to provide for yourself and your family. Strong component of unions. Yes, as a manager in Exxon, I went toe to toe with unions at the bargaining table, and I'm not ashamed of that. However, I never once, ever questioned the value of unions. they kept industry honest. And I got to tell you what, I shook their hands after every meeting, thanking them for keeping me honest. And they did. So they were hard discussions, but I'm pro-union every day and all day. And LGBTQ plus, look, I don't have a lot of time to speak a lot about that, but you know what? Be who you were meant to be. And you should never have to be harassed, ashamed, or denied anything because you love who you want to love and you are who you want to be, who God made you to be. And you know what? I will fight for that, and I will fight for that, and I will fight for that. Ladies, thank you so much for the opportunity to spend 34 minutes. I've never had 34 minutes, and I hope your listeners got a little bit about me, about my issues, and I give you the floor back.
Thank you.
Well, I'm just going to
much.
say right off the bat, I live in Harris County. I live in Houston. So I don't know what district I'm in, but I don't think it's 24. And Electra, you're in 23, by the way.
Okay.
And I heard you talking about things that matter to me.
Yes.
And I think if one representative in Austin can talk enough, loud enough, strong enough, informed enough, then the other representatives will listen. And that's what I want. And you talked about Medicare. I was working at the College of the Mainland when I became ill. I became disabled. And I wasn't prepared to retire at that age, but here I am. And so I need help. And I manage quite well because I know how to add 2 and 2 together, and I know it doesn't come up to 6. So, I manage quite well, but wouldn't it be nice if we weren't punished for being ill or punished for being old?
Mhm.
I paid into the system for 43 years.
Yeah.
I wasn't a slacker, but yet the benefits are lacking. And you talked about women's rights. I mean, I can't even go there because I would take up the next 30 minutes. But so many things that you talked about. And even though knowing you're not handling my district, but I know that when you go to Austin, you can talk and speak and project to these other representatives. I was without power for 10 days, Ice Mageddon, as I call it. And I was without water for 3 weeks for Ice Mageddon. Because once the pipes burst, they couldn't get pipes in to replace them with. It makes no sense. That makes no sense that our entire part of our country froze. That's never frozen before. And I know people in the north say, oh, those temperatures are nothing. Well, there's something when none of your pipes are buried 3 feet underground, and none of ours are.
Yeah.
So we need to address that. And we need someone in Austin to at least make the other representatives start thinking.
Yes.
Thank you.
I want to jump in there, and if you could, Mr. Creedon, talk a little bit more on, because I got questions on Medicare and the freeways, and I'm reading questions and how it's going to affect our areas. The freeways you're talking about and the Medicare, that's the question that a viewer wants for you to kind of elaborate more on for them.
Sure, I'll start off with the Medicaid one. So the Affordable Care Act was able to provide health insurance up through a certain economic area, how much you make. And then higher than that, most people are able to purchase either private insurance or they get it through their employers. But there's a gap. And out of the 33 million people in Texas, there's about 1 million people that are too rich to be poor and get it, but they're not rich enough to be able to afford private insurance or be able to access insurance through their employer for whatever reason. And so those million people just go without. And the feds have said, we will cover that under the Affordable Care Act. I mean, 91, 92% of that burden, the feds will say, we got it, but you got to do your 8%, which I don't have the numbers in front of me, but let's say 1 or 2 billion. I don't know, out of a $125 billion state budget, of which I'm telling you there's a surplus. And I'm telling you there's a huge surplus, right? So this is the time to do the right thing for those people that have found themselves in a gap for they're working.
Yeah.
They just can't get there. So that's a little bit building on that. Drugs, insulin, tragedy. There is no reason why we in the United States, who manufactures the majority of these drugs, pay the highest price in the world, not even close. I mean, I understand capitalism, I really do. But I also understand at some point, you can't just have it be run away. It has to be regulated. And there are certain areas where we say, you know what, we're not going to privatize the military. You know what, we're not going to privatize the education system. You know what, we can't just let pharmaceutical costs drive people to make those decisions like, do I get insulin this week or do I eat this week?
Right.
Amen.
Unacceptable choices. Unacceptable in the land of plenty. So that's something I will be advocating for in getting state resources to help House District 24. That was one of your questions, Electra. The second question on the Grand Parkway. So the Grand Parkway will be here within 10 years. And I want you to think of it as the Beltway, because that's what it is. And it's going to slice through my district and District 23, about where 646 is, all the way to 146. And then it goes out to, I think it's going to 35. And so it's going to be a toll road, and it's going to separate Galveston County in half. Now, what happens when you build a high mobility corridor? Well, I know what I would do in the capitalistic world. I would look at warehousing and getting trucks out there, and maybe now the Port of Galveston is going to be a more viable means to move goods back and forth, or even Barber's Cut. And we're going to have trucks rolling 18-wheelers and containers just hauling through League City on its way to points west and north. Okay, what does that do for District 24? I don't know, right? I mean, I'm not against warehouses, but maybe we want something better. Maybe we want semiconductor factories. Maybe we want parks. Maybe we want schools. Maybe we want housing. Maybe we want a medical academia facility. I think we should have a lot more active role in this once in a generational opportunity, because when that highway is built and we don't control what's there, someone will fill that vacuum with what they think is the most profitable for them. And Austin has a role in helping Galveston shape that. And that's my point. And we are not talking enough about that, because there is no single infrastructure investment that's going to occur in our lifetime, ladies, than that Grand Parkway and what it will do and change the lives of Galveston County forever. That's Creedon's opinion.
I think people, they look at that because, oh, that's 10 years away. It may be 10 years away from being a viable construction, a viable thing that we can get on our cars and use. But when I worked at College of Maine, I lived in Alvin, and the Grand Parkway was due to go. I actually lived 15 miles south of Alvin, and the Grand Parkway was due to go right past my property. And they told me, oh, it'll only be 20 years. And I did not take it seriously.
Yeah.
And now I hear about people racing to buy up land out there. And we need to have some control over what they do with this land. Because if
Yes.
we don't, there'll be chemical factories, there'll be all kinds of things.
That's
We don't-
right. There'll be anything the imagination can come up with that will be profitable.
Right,
Okay.
exactly,
Mm.
exactly.
Mr. Creedon too, got a question about education. If you could talk a little bit on by the state of education, the state of our education in system in Texas. Someone wants you to.
Sure. Look, I first of all, I have children in the education system, and I'm going to start off, and most people start off with this very negatively. I'm going to start off very positively.
Okay.
The school systems that my children have been involved in have been nothing short of absolutely awesome and life-changing, and shaped them to be the young men that they are today and the awesome citizens that they're going to become. The dedication of the administrators and the teachers and the parents and the community in the school systems I've been involved with is refreshing. If I was having a bad day and I could at least get to a school event, I left with a smile on my face because they're doing God's work in those schools.
Yes.
But God's work is getting hard, really hard, because these teachers are now transitioning much more from just A, B, C's and math into life skills and nutrition and gang violence and teen pregnancy and addiction and mental health. And they're becoming much more than just a teacher. And yet, what I've noticed, Electra, in the last 2 to 5 years is a general attack on our teaching community.
Yes.
Who are doing this work. And let's face it, most of them, many of them could have chosen another profession with their degrees and made a boatload more money. But that's not who they were called to be. And now I feel we, the state in particular, is starting to leave them high and dry.
Okay.
And I don't like that.
Yes.
They need to be compensated. They needed to be supported. The parental community and the school boards need to, when the teachers walk by, they need to go, they're the most important people in this world because they're where the road meets the rubber. And what can I do to make you successful? That is not what's going on right now. There's an attack on the teachers, like they're the problem. They're creating a society of people that are, I guess, don't look like or don't act like the generations before. And you got the Fox News spin machine going nonstop.
Yes.
And it's working people up about issues that I don't think existed in the high school to begin with.
You're right.
And yet they're there now.
Yes.
So I want to try to return some adult sanity and supervision to that topic. But I got to tell you, the forces of evil are strong on this one.
Yes.
Really strong.
Yes. Well, shoes, thank you for that answer. Have another question on college tuition. Does that play into education? College tuition, the increase of college tuition.
Yeah.
Is there anything that can be done about that?
Absolutely. Look, not being able to afford college should not be the reason why our young minds who have chosen that as their next phase to not be able to go. I do think Texas has a competitive advantage, and maybe we don't think so, but versus many of the other states, Texas colleges are actually pretty cost effective. All right. However, are they too expensive? We can debate that. And if they are, if we conclude they are too expensive, then there is there is a significant amount of money in the educational foundations and in the state coffers with the land board, et cetera, that can be deployed to further reduce college tuition. So don't tell me we don't have the money again, because that is just not accurate. We have assets and minerals and land and investments at the state level that we don't talk about a lot. But don't tell me it's the fact that we don't have the funding to create affordable college education for those that wish to choose that path.
Thank you.
So that may have sounded a bit more political of an answer than some of my others. But I think the solution is the funding is there, and we should look at tuition rates. And if they're too high and financial aid is not coming, yeah, we got to address that.
Well,
That's
and
not gonna
another
reason-
thing, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Electra.
No, I was looking at
I have
you.
I have a sister who just graduated from college. She's 58 years old. And like me, I wasn't on the 5-year college plan. I was on the 30-year college plan. And so before I had the opportunity to have any of my school loans dismissed, I paid a whole lot of money. But you're going through your life, starting your life after college already in $100,000 worth of debt because of this school loan. And you're positive that you're going to make that $100,000, but not everybody does. You don't walk into the workforce, especially like my sister, who got her college degree at, oh, she probably wouldn't be happy with me telling you how old she is, but that's okay. Anyway, at 58, had a misconception that she was going to graduate and get some of the same jobs as a 24-year-old was going to get. Well, that doesn't happen in our world.
No.
So her college debt is falling on her. Yes, she has a job. She has a nice job. She has a good job. But it's not what she was sold when she was getting the financial aid, when she was taking out the loans. So I think that we need to be more responsible in the rhetoric. We need to put some limitations on the rhetoric that we tell people when they're taking out school loans or whatever. You know,
no doubt. No, I mean, to me, that's the easier of the two fixes to implement. I mean, unfortunately, maybe it's not a great expression, but that one's going to be closing the barn door after the horses run out, right?
Exactly.
So we're going to fix it for future generations for sure. That rhetoric's got to stop.
Right.
You can't promise them this. I mean, if you're going to take a $40,000 a year job and you have $200,000 in loans to get that job, the math will never work, folks. It just won't work. So there are certain fields that will not. Now, okay, so but what do we do with where we are right now? The feds have done loan forgiveness. I don't know if Austin is going to entertain that, but I think there could be some interesting programs we could look at where service. I mean, are there ways that people could serve back to the community, either as in the educational field or in
healthcare,
fire protection field, I don't know, some other fields where they, in exchange for loan forgiveness, spend a certain amount of time serving the communities, and then you get a bit more of a, okay, yeah, you got sold a bad rap, but you are, we're going to give you a path to get out from it that's slightly better than just all your loans are forgiven. I mean, I think there's a middle ground.
I do agree with that because I did such a program, and I was able to have a lot of my pay off my loans with service to the state, and that was at state funded colleges and universities. There are options out there, but not everyone's aware of that. They don't get told these things. So I want someone in Austin to have a voice and say, shouldn't we make it a part of the requirement that we talk about what you can do with your degree to get some relief from that degree? Yes. And maybe there's places that do talk about that. They just didn't talk about it to me, but I'm a smart person. So,
Fair enough. Fair enough.
You
Well,
know?
look, it's a give and take on these dialogues. So like
Yeah,
I get to
yeah.
learn as much as you all learn about me. I get to learn about some of your views on these issues. I clearly am going to spend some more time on this one.
Anytime you want to come talk to me in Electra, right, Electra? Electra's
Yes,
also got a master's degree. So
yes,
we
yes.
both can speak from this education area. And yeah,
And I'm glad
you
about
just give us,
I'm glad about the dialogue tonight. When we passed the mic, you opened so many things up, the minds of people,
did.
Mr. Creedon. And so that's where the questions are coming from, because what it tells me is people have a lot of questions. And for you to come on and talk to us, and people that's gonna see this interview after, it's posted, they're gonna have some questions. So you're getting the wheels turning in the minds of the people. We
Mhm.
are the people. We are
We
the
are
ones that this is going to impact. And what I like about through your conversation, you are concerned about everybody. You don't just have one group. You touched on everything. And everybody can see themselves somewhere in there. But I know we got to get ready to wrap it up. And Jackie, did you have anything before Mr. Creedon has the last word?
No, I think I've spoken my mind tonight. So I think I'm okay.
Okay. Mr. Creedon, you can close us out with whatever you want to leave us with on tonight.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to, we talked about a lot of things over the last hour, inflation relief and power grids, flood control, education, jobs, healthcare, gun violence reduction, infrastructure, border security, veterans, living wages. I didn't get to talk about transition to green, but I'll have to save that for another time. Women's rights, voting rights, and LGBTQ plus. And what an awesome opportunity it was to give you a glimpse into my platform. What I like to leave with the voters, as you listen to me, I am 100% positive that you will listen to what I've said over the last 30 minutes or last hour, and there will be one or two items that you don't agree with me on. And that's okay. It's okay. I'm not going to be able to get 100% unanimous agreement from everybody. No representative can do that. But all I ask you is don't let those one or two things that you disagree with me on, or I didn't articulate it well, or I didn't come across confident, or I came across too confident. Don't let those one or two drive the other 14 or 15 things that we do have alignment on. Because maybe I can learn and I can adjust my views accordingly, or maybe it's just I misspoke. I ask you, unless it's a core issue. Now, if it's a core issue, then we're done here. You can dismiss me. But if it's not a core issue, then look at the whole picture, not just part of it. And on that note, thank you so much. My name is Michael Creedon. I'm running as a candidate for House District 24 as a Democrat, and you can find me on creedonfortexas.com, CreedonforTexas.com. And that's also my handle on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, all the social media platforms. Ladies, thank you so much. And I really look forward to being your representative on November 8th with an awesome victory party that I can't wait to attend.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Bye. Night.
Good night now.
Good night.